Thank you, Angela, for providing some LA history. The Eastside Cafe is essential in our community of LA, greater LA area. I know that I shared in the chat how, I've been going to the Eastside Cafe since way back when I started at UC Santa Barbara. And I think the exposure to places like this that are truly convivial and public and accessible is so important. I know that, for me growing up in the city of Compton, we didn't have spaces like that. And still today, those spaces are very minimal. So it's so important for us to just support spaces such as this that have been engaging the public for so many years now. And so I just want to share a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste in the chat here the link to the program for today for everyone to access. It is a Google Doc. And I just want to share a few words about basically what I wrote. And that's the letter to the community regarding our programming for this year. And I think it's important for us to just remind ourselves that we're coming out of a time, we're not even out of it yet. I mean, we're still in it. So much social unrest and devastation that we've experienced because of the pandemic, that it's so important for us to hold space for educators, whether they are in the classroom or in the community, to collectively witness and hold space for one another to really listen and share, to sustain those practical tools that have enabled us to be able to learn, to be able to heal, and to truly thrive, triunfar, right? As educators, that do this kind of work in our classrooms and in community spaces like the Eastside Cafe and other spaces throughout where we live. We all know that the power of education really translates beyond the classroom, and that we are able to create solutions to old historical problems that still exist today and that manifest themselves in new ways. And that allow for us to reimagine our collective future, right? And so I think it's important to be able to hear each other out and share some of those practical tools, which today is a little bit of that, and contributing to this kind of legacy of resilience in our communities. Sharing and creating new knowledge does offer us all the opportunity to reclaim the loss of value, dignity, and joy that we all deserve. And so I want to invite everyone and welcome you to just share space with one another and to listen to one another. Feel free to drop anything that you feel is necessary that may come to mind in the chat, whether it's a question, it's a comment, feedback, anything. This space is for all of us to utilize as our own. And the program that we have prepared for you really is an ofrenda to our community. It's an offering, a labor of love. This offering is meant to sustain the public's engagement with education and learning, because we know that learning happens in all spaces, places in our lives. And the speakers we have called upon will collectively aid us in reimagining our roles as student, teachers, scholars in and out of educational institutions. In our profession, we must be prepared to understand and tackle issues of racial justice. And that's really the theme that we're kind of zoning in on today here. The speakers of today will each provide a nuanced introspection into their practice. So hopefully you are all accessing the program that I put here in the chat. And I want to briefly share my screen of what that looks like. Let's see if I could do this. Here it is. All right. This is what the program for today looks like. And I do want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, obviously the Eastside Cafe, the Association of Raza Educators, a shout out to the LA chapter, the LA Indigenous Peoples Alliance. And here you'll see like the contents of what the program contains, the letter to the community that we wrote, but also community agreements that we thought were necessary for making sure that spaces like these remain convivial, but also safe for everyone to participate in. And so actually, I want to kind of jump into that really quickly. I'm not going to go over this, but I hope that you all, if you haven't already taken a look at it, that you do. And then kind of moving along here, I want to point your attention to the Google folder, which you have access to. In this Google folder, you'll see that there are folders here for the lineup of speakers that we have. And there will be things that will be shared throughout today, whether it's links to websites or PDFs or slides that folks have prepared. So feel free to look through that to see if it's already available. And if not, I highly recommend that you create a bookmark and revisit that some point after today's event, where folks will be putting their stuff in there. And then, yeah, so this is the program for today. I'm not going to go through that just yet, but I do want to also say, very last thing, to save the date for our future programming, which we'll be talking about at the very end of today. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And up next, I'm going to be introducing briefly the moderator that we have for today, and that's Ron Espiritu. I know a lot of you may already be familiar with Ron's work. He's definitely an asset to not just our community here, but really across the United States, whose work is really renowned everywhere. And so just a little bit about Ron. Ron has been teaching ethnic studies classes to high school students in LA for the past 17 years. He currently serves as a program coordinator of Camino, Nuevo Charter Academy, and it's K through 12 interdisciplinary ethnic studies program that's located in MacArthur Park. He's a founding member of the People's Education Movement, a grassroots community organization that supports educators in their development of critical pedagogy, social justice, and transformative education. Ron is also an important participant in our local and national campaigns that have promoted and continue to promote ethnic studies approaches to teaching and learning. So I'm going to go ahead and give it here to Ron. Welcome, Ron.
Hi, everybody. So excited to be here. Thank you, Lucha, for the introduction. Thank you to Lucha and Santiago for inviting me. So excited to be here today to learn more from all of our presenters, to be in dialogue, learning about the Eastside Cafe as well. Last time I was there, I was at a feminist punk rock show with a family-friendly feminist punk rock show with my 5-year-old daughter and 8-year-old son, and it was a blast. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be in community with all of you. I put in the chat box a link to a Google folder that I'll be referencing in a brief chat that I wanted to share with everybody today. So I'm going to share my screen and share a little bit about the work that I'm currently engaging in and that I've historically engaged in, just to position myself and provide some context to my work and to our collective efforts. And I'm excited to be moderating today. Can everybody see my screen okay? Yeah, okay, great. So first off, just sharing my contact information. Please reach out to me. I have my Instagram and my email there. These are some pictures of students and family members. I wanted to position myself. I entered the conversation through ethnic studies. Ethnic studies is a 55-year-old movement, 55-year-old plus movement here in the United States. For me, some of the most important ethnic studies professors that I ever had actually weren't professors in institutions, but they were community members. Raul Salinas, Luis Reyes Rivera, Jose Montoya, Carmen Tafoya, and many others were folks that taught me my history and our collective history when oftentimes it was missing from the K-12 schooling and the college experience that I had growing up. Also, just positioning ethnic studies work in generational community work. I'm a second generation educator. My parents were bilingual education teachers in the 1970s in San Antonio, Texas, where I'm originally from. I have two older sisters who are educators. They're there in that top right-hand corner. I'm married to an incredible educator as well, who teaches here in Los Angeles. That bottom right-hand picture is one of my favorites because my father says it was his first protest that he ever went to when we were fighting for ethnic studies here in Los Angeles. Just wanted to give an overview of that Google folder that I shared. So a part of what Santiago and Lucha asked all of us to share today was artifacts of our teaching and our learning. So in this folder, you'll be able to access different units, different projects that I've worked with high school ethnic studies students. I hope that some of this might be informative for you. Please let me know if you have any questions. It's also, I also put a link in the collective Google folder there as well. So yeah, just defining what is ethnic studies. So today's conversation is around racial equity among urban school youth of color. And so thinking about what does racial justice, social justice look like in our classroom? How do we address issues of systems of oppression, racism, and social injustice? So I enter that conversation through intersectional ethnic studies. And so this is an image that helps us to think about, comes from an article called Towards an Ethnic Studies Pedagogy that is written by some of the preeminent ethnic studies scholars, folks like Alison Santiago, Christine Sleater, and many others. So it frames itself as an anti-racist or anti-oppression approach, actively challenging systems of oppression, as a decolonial approach, challenging colonization and its impact on our students. Being culturally and community responsive are some of those key pieces. So for about a decade, I actually taught in South Central Los Angeles. During that time, I was working with primarily Black, African-American, Latinx, Chicanx, Central American youth. And so during that time, a lot of the work that I was doing was focused on Black and Brown solidarity and Black and Brown unity through the different units, lessons, and projects that I was teaching. So if you look into that folder, there's actually a chapter that was published in a book called Whitewashed American Education. It was published, co-written with my colleague and friend, Jerica Coffey, where we talk about how you engage Black and Brown youth in a solidarity curriculum and pedagogical approach. And one of those ways that we did it was through teaching about African and Indigenous shared resistance to colonization. And I talk a lot about that in that chapter that's in that folder. About 7 years ago, I moved schools to a different neighborhood, to MacArthur Park, Westlake, Echo Park, downtown Los Angeles. That community was really different. So I am Chicano, Mexican American. I'm also part Filipino. And on my mother's side, we trace our roots to the Kickapoo Nation. But for me, going to that new neighborhood was something different. So a lot of Central American youth, a lot of students from El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Belize. And so a big part of that was family histories and family stories when I went to teach this high school ethnic studies course. So these are some pictures of some of the images and of the projects that students created, but really it was the stories. It was the stories that students created, and it was the stories that students told. And so I remember going to a number of, actually it was like Chicano or Chicanx youth conferences, and taking my students, my Central American students, and being really intentional about bringing those stories and those voices to that place and having that dialogue with students of different racial and ethnic groups. Another piece that we bring into the classroom, that I brought into my high school ethnic studies classroom, was around learning about indigeneity, learning about Mayan, many of the people that were mentioned in being the Eastside Cafe that was mentioned and being inspired. I was very inspired by the Zapatista movement myself as a young person. And so this is a project where students create codices or machlis. As we learn about book burnings and colonization, we also learn about how do we reclaim culture, how do we reclaim history. And these are some pictures of students who are very proud of some of the projects that they created, bringing in local artists, people like Jake Prendez or Jay Chavez, or many other artists inspiring that work. Another project that I'm really excited and proud of participating in is with some of my colleagues, like Elias Serna, John Avalos Rios, who came up with something called the Pop-Up Book Project. This whole concept came from book bannings and banning of ethnic studies, banning of Chicano studies that took place in Arizona. And so these pop-up book projects has been a way of thinking about, you can't destroy ethnic studies, you can't ban this knowledge or this history. And in the community that I teach in, many Central American voices like Berta Cáceres get brought into this dialogue and discussion. Another artifact that comes from the classroom is a graffiti stencil project. So this was a project inspired by my dear friend, Luis Garcia, who's now in Sacramento, who talks about creating like visual representations of leaders from our community and adorning those images in our libraries, in our hallways, in our classrooms, and teaching students about these different stories. Eastside Cafe is a place where a lot of powerful music was born, right? Folks like Las Cafeteras, I mentioned the feminist punk rock show that I attended with my young daughter and my wife maybe like a year ago. But music is another piece where we teach about racial justice and racism, but through a way that can be accessible to young people and high school students. And that inspires different projects and being out in the community and helping our Indigenous students be proud of who they are. And so one of my messages today is like, being in the classroom and teaching these lessons was something that was really incredibly inspiring, but like, how do you grow outside of the classroom? And so 7 years ago, while I was teaching full time, I started to develop a K-12 interdisciplinary ethnic studies program in the organization I work for, Camino Nuevo Charter Academy, where 6 schools serve about 4,000 students in those communities that I was teaching that has a strong Central American Indigenous student population. And so through the years, we grew from 5 people to 10 people to 60 people to 100 people to now we have like a network priority when it comes to engaging in racial justice, social justice, and ethnic studies. This graphic shows how we've actually created an entire framework of how we do teaching and learning in Camino Nuevo that's rooted in ethnic studies pedagogy, with over 300 teachers participating in our professional development strands. And the way that our professional development works is we bring in expert keynote speakers to talk to all of our teachers. We have differentiated ethnic studies training for PE teachers, art teachers, kinder teachers, social studies teachers, science teachers, math teachers, to figure out how do you ingrain racial justice and social justice in all of the academic disciplines at different grade levels. We also have different differentiated PD for school sites so they can develop whole school approaches to racial justice and social justice. And a part of that is through the partnerships that we've created with folks like Dr. Floribo Lopez out of the UCLA Chicanx and Central American Studies Department, or the UCLA History and Geography Project, or the Cesar Chavez Foundation, and including parents in that work has been key to our foundation. In fact, that picture of one of the teachers is some of the work that parents actually created alongside their students during our program. And so what we've learned through this program in our 8 years is that it can be replicated to other school districts, larger school districts. In fact, I'm currently working with Hacienda La Puente Unified School District right now, which is much larger than Camino Nuevo, in building out an ethnic studies program at that school site or in that school district. I'm currently working on a research project with my colleague, Dr. Floribo Lopez, around Central American studies for K-12 students. And we're hoping, along with Cindy Mata, who's on this call, to potentially have a Central American Studies Institute for K-12 teachers in the near future. So I just wanted to end by saying, I'm really excited to join today's conversation and to bring some of this work and points of view, and to hear from Jessa, to hear from Tina, to hear from Alejandro, Sylvia, and Cynthia. I'm so excited to learn alongside you. And I just can't be more excited to be here today. So please join us in the chat box. Unmute yourself when we invite folks to do that. And thank you for letting me share a little bit. Santiago, should I transition to our next speakers? You're on mute, but I'm gonna think that's a yes. Okay, so Tina, hi Tina, thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna introduce Tina first, and then after that, if I can, go ahead, Santiago.
Go for it, you're good.
Okay, I'm gonna introduce Tina first, and then Jessa after that. So thank you so much for Tina and Jessa for being here. Tina Orduna Calderon is a culture bearer of the Gabrielino, Tongva, Chumash, and Yome descent. She is wife, mother, grandmother, sister, and auntie to many. Tina is a singer who also enjoys composing poems and songs. To date, she has composed over a dozen songs in her ancestral languages of Tongva and Chumash. Additionally, Tina is a traditional dancer and storyteller who strongly believes in honoring her ancestors by sharing their history and culture. Tina mentors several youth groups. She works with various environmental organizations, consults for schools, serves on several boards, and holds a few advisory positions, all in the educational and environmental fields. Much of her work revolves around giving voice to the lands, waters, and sacred elements and encouraging others to be good relatives. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you, Ron. Meiha nehinkam, netwanya ne Tina Orduno Calderon, komikra betnaha tongve, koi miskanakan, koi yo eme. Awesh koneha ko awamane te hovetamet. Hello, my relatives. I am Tina Orduno Calderon, Gabrielino Tongva, Ventureño Chumash, and Yueme, and I'm very happy to be here with all of you today. I'd like to begin by thanking Professors Santiago Andres Garcia and Lucha Arevalo of Rio Hondo College for the invitation to share, and most importantly, for following important protocols and bringing us to the table at the beginning of the planning stage. Gratitude also to Angela Flores of Eastside Cafe and El Sereno Community Land Trust, which I serve on the board of. And I thank Angela for her friendship and continued support of the Tongva Tam. Lastly, I want to thank all of you in attendance. I want to thank you for sharing your time and your energy in this forum. And I hope we're able to deliver something beautiful that you can take away important information of. So I began my introduction in my ancestral language to honor my tribal relatives, the Tarahatom, or peoples, past, present, and emerging, and especially the ancestors of Sahatna, where Rio Hondo College is located, and Pacoima, now called Pacoima, where I'm located now. The topic of racial equity and justice, which is being discussed today, is a hot topic being addressed in many school systems, as well as in the business world. It is a critical step in creating fair and healthy environments where people feel seen, heard, and understood. True equity, however, must be inclusive of all peoples, including the First Nations peoples of this land. As a culture bearer, consultant, and Native advisor, I'm often asked to help institutions create their culturally sensitive land acknowledgements. In guiding them on this true practice of acknowledging not only the local tribe, but all life which has thrived here for millennia, and encouraging them to create a statement which they and their counterparts can deliver in all sincerity, I also must advise them that a statement is only a first step in forming relationships, which is the true goal. They have a responsibility to create a curriculum which not only includes the historical information of the local tribe, but also the people are able to tell their stories and educate on the fact that we are still here. We're living in communities amongst you all. We're thriving the best we can. And yes, even our displacement from our traditional territories must be spoken of. The Tongva are not federally recognized. We are considered state recognized, but that carries no weight and no benefits, which means we have no land base. Our strength is our resiliency. Our resiliency is spurred by our deep connection to our environment, including the lands, waters, plants, and animal relatives, as well as the sacred elements. Racial equity and justice is the building block for the healing that we all need. However, for the Tongva, and other indigenous peoples, we cannot heal until our land, waters, and air are no longer ailing. When the waters are allowed to flow without restriction, when the dams come down and the concrete is removed from the river bottom, when the land is respected and all harmful practices cease, when traditional ecological knowledge is practiced as needed, when harmony and balance returns to the natural environment, then and only then can we truly begin to heal. To give you a better understanding of who the Gabrielino people are, I wanted to share with you one of our creation stories, and we do have many. And many of our stories, they began before the humans even came into this realm, because we recognize that we were the last, that there was life forms here before us. But this particular story, it's called Pa'ar Hoy Tovangad, which means the turtle, and Tovangad, which is our world, the world that we know. So I'm gonna go ahead and share, let's see, a PowerPoint that has the story so you can kind of see it. All right, is that visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this starts long, long ago. The earth was covered with water. There was no dry land, just lots and lots of water. And there were many life forms, from underwater plants, coral, sand, and stones, to beautiful creatures that swam and thrived in the waters. One day, Creator decided there must be land so that there could be tall mountains, plants, trees, and many types of land creatures. But how could the landforms be created? Just then, a huge tortoise swam by, and Creator said, "Perfect, that's what I'll use." Creator called to him and said, "Brother Turtle, I have a very important job for you. Come here, please." I'm going to change this to slideshow so you can see better. Or maybe not. Here we go. Tortoise came over and asked Creator, "What is it? What would you have me do?" Creator said, "I would like to use the top of your shell for the base of land. It will be a job of utmost importance, as you will be responsible for supporting many earthly life forms." Tortoise wasn't sure that he was up for such an important job, but Creator soon convinced him that he was the perfect one for the job. Creator said, "I do not expect you to do this important job all alone. I will need you to go get your brothers. Go tell them how strong and special they are, and that they are needed to help with this important job. Go find them and bring them to me." So the tortoise sent off, went in search for his brothers. It took him a whole day to find one brother, and another whole day to find the second brother. After several days, he found all 6 brothers, and they all swam back to see what Creator would have them do. The turtles were very excited. With their eyes wide and their ears tuned in, they asked Creator, "What important job do you have for us?" Creator told them that they should stand in a line, head to tail. Sorry, I didn't change the slide. Head to tail, tail to head, making sure that they form a strong chain. Once the turtles were in place, Creator told them to stand very still and he began to form the earth, placing sand and soil upon their backs very carefully. Every now and then, one turtle would move a little, so Creator had to remind them that they must stand perfectly still. This landform would be called Tovangad originally, and then one day it would be known as the Americas. And part of it in the north would be called California. As Creator told them, all of this important plan, they held as still as they could while Creator continued forming the landmass. When the land was perfectly formed upon the turtles' backs, Creator poked some holes into the dirt and planted seeds into the earth. And soon beautiful trees and plants began to spring up. Creator then formed with mighty hands curves in the soil, which quickly formed into streams, creeks, rivers, and lakes. Creator was pleased as the landscape began to take shape. Mountains, hills, flat land, and an abundance of clean water emerged, and it was good. But just then, as everything was coming into perfect form, something terrible happened. The tortoises felt the earth, that weight that was too heavy for their backs, and they started to complain, and they shifted their bodies in an effort to find support beneath them. They decided this was too big of a job for them. The two top turtles said, "I'm going east," and the third turtle said, "I'm going west." The other brothers decided to go out in all different directions so that they could spread out across the waters again. As the turtles moved apart, the earth shifted and shook and began falling into the ocean with a loud boom. This was the first earthquake. Creator quickly addressed them and said, "Brother turtles, what are you doing? I gave you an important job. Look at what you have done. I told you that you must be still. I told you that you would be responsible for supporting Tongva. It's a great honor that I have given you. I would not have chosen you all if I thought that you could not handle it." Creator then asked Tortoise if they understood the importance of if they would agree to stand still so that there could be land and all the life upon the lands which they were holding on their backs previously. All of them agreed. They would accept the responsibility and they would do their best to stand still from now on. Creator fixed all of the formations once again, which allowed for many kinds of plants and animals to be supported too. Eventually, us humans would take form also. This is one of our creation stories, and it's why we refer to Tongva, now called America, as Turtle Island. Every now and then, one of those turtles gets tired and has to shift a little bit. We feel those tremors and earthquakes, don't we? We really can't blame them for needing to find a little bit of comfort. The movement is a reminder to be grateful for the still and peaceful times and to be prepared for the rocky and bumpy times. Okay, let me stop sharing. I thank you so much. And I know Jessa will be coming up next. Ron, are you going to be introducing her?
Yes, thank you, Tina. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and reminders about the importance of Tongva, Gabrielino, Chumash people as the original and ongoing stewards and protectors of this land. And thank you so much for sharing that creation story with us. I was thinking about how important it is for all young people that I want that story for all young people, kindergartners and elementary school students and people of all ages to hear and also understand and reflect on. So thank you so much for offering that to us. And I want to transition to introduce Jessa Calderon, who is Tina's daughter. So honored that both of them are joining us today. Jessa is a singer, she's a songwriter, a poet, an author, and is a part of the Chumash and Tongva Nation. She is a published author, poet, hip hop artist, performer, hypnotherapist, massage therapist, energy worker, and she also offers guided meditation. Jessa encourages our community and youth to find their healing mentally, physically, and spiritually by sharing her words, music, and practices. She has had the honor to work with community and youth from many nations, helping them find themselves while helping them to feel good about themselves, which we all need. So welcome, Jessa.
Thank you. Before I get started, I just want to make sure, can you all hear me? Okay, I'm going to keep my camera off as well because my service is a little shoddy. And I just wanted to start with sharing experiences. My being committed to like racial justice began for me in elementary school around the 4th grade, while enrolling into a school where racism was very apparent. It was a young girl who had learned from her family. So this is where I understood that like racism is something that originally starts at home, right? And so the young girl was telling me to go back to Mexico and calling me a wetback. So my father had me go back to school and tell her, well, if I'm a wetback, you're a soakback, to educate them about how that's wrong because they crossed an ocean, and saying things like that is, disrespectful. And my mother thought that that wasn't the way to handle it. So she had us go into school and share, my brother and I had to share our dance powwow styles in front of them to let them know that, Native people are still present and we're proud peoples. And that did help a lot to let people know that, their ignorance on assuming people's nationalities and things was inappropriate, and that hatred, that they had for us was inappropriate. And then around the same time, we had the mission project that came up, was about 4th grade. And so, like the true history of our people had always been shared within the household, but now it's coming up in school, and what we're learning in school was completely falsified. They literally told us that the Mission Indians were treated so well. Like they compared it almost to like a day spa, right? And so that's where my mom came in and, educated us a little further, but then took it now into the school system and educated my teacher, who had no idea the facts, right? Because they are being trained to basically erase us, is what it comes down to. And so with my mom and my dad, we were able to come in and say, you know what, we're not going to participate in this erasure. This is not the truth, and this is our truth. And so we were able to actually do that through our mission project as well, which was not a beautiful, pretty picture, the way that other kids' little sugar cube missions were. We also included the grave sites that, fail to offer us humanity, right? Like we don't even have the same gravestones that the human beings from the missions are actually offered. So we were able to kind of like bring this all in. And another experience I'll share was in 8th grade. And mind you, I went to Los Angeles Unified School District. So in 8th grade, I was sitting in the front row of my history class, and my teacher was tapping on my desk as she used me as an example to the class. And she was saying, your people came across the Bering Strait. Well, my father had already talked to me about this and, told me about our creation stories. And so when I brought up the fact that that was inaccurate, I was sent away for talking back, and I was suspended for being disrespectful. And if you ask me, the disrespect was somebody telling me my history, right? And not the other way around. So my father did come in and had a discussion with my teacher. And once again, I was not in trouble because my family understood how hard it is to, be Indigenous, Indian Native in a public school setting. So shout out to my mom and dad for always allowing me to be myself, because I know in other Indian families, they try to shut that down amongst their own family members too, because of the fear of being discriminated against. It's really hard for us. So moving forward, I decided, like, I've always known that I was a massage therapist from the young age of 8. And it seems that school is always trying to shape us to be something more like a factory worker than an independent sovereign being. And so for me, it's always been important that we offer people the ability to listen to themselves, to do for themselves, and to understand that, you know, we are all here as an important member to society. You know, we all have our positions, and Native people understood that very well, where they allow people to continue on their journey and they see what somebody is supposed to be and help them follow that, you know, journey as a young child. And so for me, it's really important to remind teachers of that, you know, not to force, you know, a square to fit into a circle, but to allow people to be who they're meant to be. So I've also been, you know, an energy worker and a writer, and I decided to use my platforms to remind, you know, people how to listen to themselves, how to educate themselves, how to listen from within, how to do the healing work, because schools are not set up for us to be healed. You know, they're from my experience, they have been set to break us and shape us into what America wants us to be. So I help people to get away from that in my teachings. You know, I am also a hypnotherapist, and I do past life regressions and just really help people to be in their truth, right? And so then I also use my platform of being, you know, a rapper, a songwriter, and recently now a published author. I wrote a book called Sisterhood. And in that book of sisterhood, it talks about these young girls going to the Los Angeles Unified School District. It follows them in their journeys, the harshness of the realities of growing up in the barrio, in the neighborhood, you know, and how these women hold each other. You know, they create their own community amongst each other, and they help each other to get through, to graduate together, and to succeed in life, have families, you know, and just do well for themselves. And so I wrote that book in hopes that, well, I'm going to back up just a little bit. These experiences from school, like the 8th grade, you know, the teacher, me getting suspended for speaking my truth, around that same time, I had a dean who was doing his absolute best to hold me back. You know, his exact words at the end of 8th grade was, you're graduating by the grace of God, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen. Why would a grown white man want to keep a young brown woman down? You know, and so that really shut me down and made me want to leave school, leave the school setting. It wasn't a place for me. I was, you know, it was so toxic, and I was depressed, you know, participating in that kind of setting. And so writing a book like Sisterhood was really to help these young ones to have their self-love at a young age, to remind them that it doesn't matter what any adult is trying to force upon you. You are a sovereign being, and you have the ability to think for yourself, to do for yourself, and above all, to succeed on your personal journey, that nobody can tell you, you know, what that journey is supposed to be. And so I'm very proud of that book. And, you know, these young Native women, they're Chicanas, you know, young women who have Native bloodlines that extend across the colonial man-made border that we know as the southern border. And it also has young women that are California Native Americans, such as Tongva and Tataviam and Chumash, and you know, and a couple others that are connected from the border, right? Because that same man-made border separates indigenous families and tribes. And so I also bring that education into that book to remind people that the ignorance of like demanding a wall and all of that, how that ignorance is very harmful, not just to the Native communities, but to families. You know, these are human beings. And so I bring all of that into this book to let people see it from an intimate viewpoint, because now you're getting in with these characters, you're getting close to them, and you get to see their struggles one-on-one. And then you get to see how they get through it together. So there's a lot of beauty in that as well. And then, you know, I'll share that teachers can find links to our tribal websites online. They can make contact there. I guess I'll say, like, it's fine to listen to what non-native experts have to say about us, but it's important to note that we as Indigenous folks don't always agree with them, as we have our truths. And these experts are actually, you know, normal people with good guesses of the evidence from our culture that they see before them. So, you know, although we can listen to them, it's really important to understand that what the Native peoples are saying about their families, their bloodlines, and their stories should be held first and foremost, because it's directly coming from us. And so, you know, hopefully we'll have our own curriculum soon made by the Gabrielino peoples for schools. But in the meantime, there are Tongva community members that have videos on YouTube where we share our own stories and truths. And people can always go to that and listen directly from the community members. One documentary that I'll share is titled The Aqueduct Between Us by Anne-Marie Mendoza and her brother Isaiah, which discusses the water that connects Los Angeles to the Paiute Nation in Owens Valley. And so for me, that's really important, because we're not learning in school about where our water is coming from and how precious it actually is. We're being disconnected in our school system, right? We're being disconnected from the water. We're being disconnected from the land. We're being disconnected from ourselves. And so to understand this connection between the water, you know, and ourselves and where our water comes from, it really puts a broader perspective on how to begin to connect and remain connected. And then another video that people can check out is Injustice by myself. I wrote it, and it was directed by myself and C Nice. And it's a music video that talks about injustices throughout Turtle Island, but it also talks about here in Los Angeles area. And then another music video, actually, no, it's not a music video, it's a song that I think teachers can use. It's a little harsh, but it's, you know, our reality is harsh, right? Our stories that have been forced upon us are harsh. And so this song is called Scars of a Warrior. They called us Mission Indians, which talks about what has happened on our homelands from the Spanish invasion through the American invasion. And this story follows one family line, and it's narrated by the spirit of the mother of a young child who was kidnapped in the Spanish system and brought into the mission system. And so it starts there where the mother is murdered because she's too difficult. And so her spirit takes on form to guide her child through all the heartache and the rapes and, you know, the hard times. And the same mother, becomes ancestor to all of the children to come. So her grandchildren, she follows her grandchildren and gives them the same strength that she gave her child to get through the harshness of our now realities. And so I think that song is really important to share, because it talks about, you know, not just us as a thing of the past, but how we're still here today struggling to have our truths be, you know, shared and told. And so yeah, I think I'll end it there. Just, you know that yes, we are still here. We're community. We're very much real people with real feelings. And, you know, we have our truths, and we would love to share it with you. Understanding also that you are on our homelands, and, you know, even though people might think that me saying something like that is somehow telling you to leave, it's never saying that. It's saying, you know, you're sharing our home with us. And in saying that, I hope you understand that I love my home and I treat my home as such, right? And when you're in my homeland, calling it your home, I hope that you do the same, that you feel connected, that you act connected, that you don't trash our homelands, that you don't disrespect our homelands. But if you're calling it home, to treasure it, to cherish it, to honor it, because we need your help as our community members to leave a safe space for the next 7 generations to come, instead of us being, shaped into the modern day school thinking that it's every man for himself and it's just today. That's not the case. We need to make sure, because if we're just being selfishly living for today, then the destruction that we feel now, the heat waves that are like unbearable and all that, what are we doing for our great grandchildren? How hard is it going to be for them because of us living for just today, So I just want to leave that with you as something to think about. Welcome to our homelands. Those of you that were born here, you see it as home, but please don't erase us. Don't erase us in your saying that this is your homelands too. Understand it's okay to say, I was born in Los Angeles, but saying something such as like, I'm native to Los Angeles completely erases the indigenous peoples that are ancestrally tied, right? And in that way, like, you're still a community member. You still belong in Los Angeles. You're still my homie, but like, homies love and respect each other, right? So like, listen to me. I want to send you all so much love. I'll ask you very briefly to take a deep breath in through your nose and breathe in that positive, loving, healing energy. Let that loving, healing energy sit in the heart, open the mind, take a deep breath out and release any negativity that might have been felt throughout the last couple of days, and just start fresh in this moment, in this time. Have a beautiful day. And just be grateful for every breath that comes into our lungs. Much love to you all. Thank you.
Can we all give some emoji love or real or clap it up for Tina and Jessa? Thank you so much for that word, for that wisdom, for that insight, for that healing energy. I certainly felt it in my heart, in my breath when I breathed in right now. Thank you so much for that, Jessa. So important, I think, to remind us that we all, many of us hold trauma from our educational experiences, and healing can be a part of the work that we do with young folks, both inside and outside of the classroom. Healing is such a necessary component. I also